Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Art Like Everything Else, the podcast. I'm your host, Mo Lovely, and let's get right into our topic for today. So, today I want to talk about survival, but not just surviving for the sake of surviving, but survival as almost as an act of defiance against um, forces that would want you to give up. And so, sometimes we are living in like the worst conditions, and in those conditions it feels like our only solution is to give up. And so simply by surviving, you are almost like proving and existing out of spite in a way, and in doing so you're using like your survival as an act of defiance against those forces that would wish you to kind of falter or to give up. And I actually want to talk about two works of art that kind of talk about that topic. So let's get right into it. So, our first work of art is a poem by Langston Hughes. So, this poem is called Still Here, and it was released or published in the year 1957. And so, for those who don't know, Langston Hughes is an African American poet, author, even like some would say activist, and he's done a lot of work where he kind of expresses um, and talks about life from through an African American lens. And so, in a way, this poem is no different. So I'm going to read the poem and then maybe talk about it perhaps a bit briefly. So, jumping right into it. The poem is called Still Here. I've been scarred and battered, my hopes the wind done scattered. Snow has frizzed me, sun has baked me, looks like between them they done tried to make me stop laughing, stop loving, stop living. But I don't care. I'm still here. It's a really beautiful poem, short and sweet, and I think it gets to the heart of what it is I kind of want to talk about this episode. The idea of surviving in spite of forces that wish for you to give up. In this poem, we hear Langston Hughes talk about how he's been feels like he's up against like the weather, um, the environment around him, that they've tried to stop him from laughing, stop loving, stop living his life, from enjoying who it is he is and the people he's around, just his life in general. But he doesn't care. He is surviving in spite of that. He is going to keep going in spite of that, and I think that is really powerful. And I found some similar themes in our next piece of art. Alrighty, so our second piece of art is actually the song Tarzan by Wallie the Sensei. He's an LA artist, and this is actually one of my songs. So this song is actually on Wallie the Sensei's No Love project that was released in 2020, and it's a really good song. The song's like 3.5 minutes. I highly suggest you listen to it if you want. I guess if you want um, spoiler free experience, I suppose, for the song, definitely pause this podcast and go listen to the song. It's only 3.5 minutes, but I am going to talk about a few lyrics to kind of show you the ways in which the song kind of correlates with our topic at hand for today. So, honestly, right off the bat, the very first like couple of lines in the song is "Nice to meet you. They call me Tarzan. I've been running through this jungle." And so in this through these lines, we can kind of infer at least that Wally the Sensei is sort of like comparing his life to that of a jungle. That like how he's living, how he's having to survive, it is like close to like how Tarzan had to survive in the jungle. And he's like he got no place to call his home, and like he's constantly moving, and constantly in motion, trying to survive the circumstances that he's in, which is like he said, he compared it to that of a jungle. Then we also have him talking about how people tried to knock him down. In like the very first verse, he talks about people trying to knock him down, um but he survived every single time that someone's tried to get at him or tried to harm him. He survived, and he is surviving in spite of that. He is surviving despite the circumstances he's been in that has put him in those dangerous situations. He's surviving um even among like the lack of community he kind of feels. Like he feels somewhat lonely. He feels like things are a bit difficult for him. And he is surviving in spite of that. And he talks about defending himself in need be, which makes sense because, like, to survive, oftentimes you will have to defend yourself. He talks about how, like, growing up, he learned how to do things for the sake of survival, for the sake of fitting in. How he didn't have the lifestyle he might have wanted growing up, um, and how, like, in pursuing his dreams and pursuing the things that he desired, and not losing hope in that possibility, he was able to kind of succeed. So like he talks about not growing up with his father. He talks about growing up poor with his mother. He talks about like wanting to kind of get on or like succeed in his endeavors in following his dream so that he can provide for his mom, for his and like help his mom out. And he talks about there were times where he was sleeping in his car, um, and he couldn't afford like to stay in certain places, um, and now he's continuing to pursue his dream, continue to survive and to keep going. He he's gonna make the world respect him. Essentially, he wants people to listen to his music. He wants people to respect him and acknowledge his music and like all the cool things about him, which I think was a really cool part. And yeah, he even goes on to talk about how like he says specifically like verbatim, um, people think Wally never owned nothing but tricks up his sleeve, he pop shove it. And in those and with those lyrics I sort of infer that like people he's acknowledging that people think that he's not gonna make it, that like him pursuing and hoping and going after his dreams, the things that he wants to do, they don't think that it's gonna be worth it or worth that investment or worth that time. But he's showing them that y'all think I'm not on nothing, but I have tricks up my sleeve. I have ways that I am going to prove that I'm capable of surviving and of moving forward. And I think that's really cool. And I kind of want to talk a bit more about that in our next segment. Now, why do you think I might have thought this particular episode was necessary or important? I think surviving in a climate where people expect you, are wanting you to give up, are wanting you um to like fall into the status quo almost, to survive and to find joy and to find happiness and to pursue the things that you want in spite of that can be seen as an act of defiance. And I think it's okay to pursue things almost as an act of defiance. So like Langston Hughes, for example, in the poem, he talks about how he feels like the environment is his environment is against him. He feels like it's trying to make him to not laugh, to not love, to not live his actual life. But he doesn't care. He doesn't care that it's actively going against him. He doesn't care that it's actively trying to confine him into a box that would make his life unlivable. He is still here and he is still surviving. And we kind of see Wally talk about that in his song Tarzan. We see Wally talk about how, yes, his upbringing hasn't been easy, but he's doing really good now. Like he's he's at the top. He feel like he's close to the top of his game. He's doing really well. People are acknowledging him and his talent now, and I think that's really important. That like they did not give up on themselves. They did not give up on what it is that they want. They chose to survive despite their circumstances, and I think that's really important. Um, we see with Wally, like he grew up underprivileged, So like both as well as like being a black person, but like he was also like in the song he talks about growing up poor and not having clothes like that, not having to ride the bus with his mom. Like they didn't have a lot of funding. And so like you can see how someone would expect someone like him to not do much, to not be more than it is that he became. And so like it was almost like a lot very similar to Langston Hughes, another black man. His environment was against him. Like the way in which he was raised, the environment in which he grew up, wasn't set up in a way for him to succeed in the way he came to succeed. But he chose to survive and he chose to thrive in spite of that. And I think that's really important that we start to see surviving not just as a means to an end, but also as an act of defiance, as an act of almost resistance against the current status quo. Surviving and finding things that we can still enjoy and finding things that still make us happy and allow us to still love. I think it is important that we look into and we embrace these things. Um, because people want you to give up. Folks want you to give up. And it is easy to give up. But it's harder to acknowledge what it is that you want and to see all the ways that the world is kind of almost against you and to choose to survive in spite of that, despite that almost. And I think that is really important. Um, I'll say an example, almost an example, I would say. I remember for myself about like doing something in spite of and like coming out better for it. So growing up, I remember I used to be really obsessed with like Legally Blonde, and I didn't want to go to. I said I would go to Harvard growing up. I didn't go to Harvard, but I remember just kind of being excited about going to school. And I had a cousin who laughed at that, um, laughed at me, saying I wanted to like go to like graduate. And I remember I kind of took that to heart. I was a child, and like they laughed at the idea of me going to school and like succeeding. And so like that kind of slick was like at the back of my mind when I was in like my undergrad and working towards my bachelor's degree. And when I graduated, like I didn't say anything to them, but I was just like, I knew it. I knew it. Um, and it felt good even then to be like, I knew you were wrong, to like prove other people wrong in like in choosing to pursue things in spite of what other people might want. So like that, like circling back to the topic at hand, folks want you to give up. Folks want you to fall in line, to stop resisting, to stop um, going up against what it is they're trying to put in place, and they want you to not like if you don't survive, you don't survive. But to survive in spite of their efforts to try to get rid of all that would make it okay for you to exist, to survive in spite of that can be just as rewarding. And so I think maybe too, survival itself, especially in the climate that we're in now, too can be in art like everything else. Last and certainly not least is this week's all moment. So for those who are new to the episode, our all moment is just the art of the week that made me think for that week. So that's where the A and the W come from, art, and then the W is the week part. So now for this week, I actually have a quote from Virginia Woolf, and I'm going to read it. And so this is kind of the quote that was on my um, heart and mind, and I feel like especially when I was kind of going about creating this episode, and I felt like it fit perfectly. So I'm going to read the quote and then maybe talk about it briefly. Yeah. Whatever happens, stay alive. Don't die before you're dead. Don't lose yourself. Don't lose hope. Don't lose the direction. Stay alive with yourself, with every cell of your body, with every fiber of your skin. Stay alive. Learn, study, think, read, build, invent, create, speak, write, dream, design. Stay alive. Stay alive inside you. Stay alive also outside. Fill yourself with colors of the world. Fill yourself with peace. Fill yourself with hope. Stay alive with joy. There is only one thing you should not waste in life, and that's life itself. And that is a quote by Virginia Woolf. And I just felt like it perfectly encapsulates exactly what it was we were talking about this episode. Surviving in despite surviving as an act of defiance against the powers that be, against the world around us, is important. It not just for like our own happiness, but for the happiness of those around us. What we may not know or may not realize or may not even want to recognize is that like we are living for more than just ourselves. We are also modeling what is and isn't okay for the generations behind us. And so if we are going to be a part of a generation that wants to see better for the future, we also have to show that like pushing up against and that like not falling in line with the status quo that is not okay, that we show them that what is not okay is not okay, and that we do what is okay for those, for ourselves and for those around us, and we move forward in that regard. It is not okay to, you know, it's not okay. I say that, but we know the world around us, and we know what is happening and why things are the way that they are. And we have to be okay with fighting against that. But yeah, that's actually all I have for you for this episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being. Have a great rest of your day. And before I close out, please follow, like, subscribe. I'm going to put the socials on the screen. So I'll put both my personal and if you'd like to keep up with the channel and this like this is kind of just like my creative bubble essentially. So all of the creative projects and things I'll be updating that I pursue and that I complete, I'll be updating with these social medias, other social media. So like Art Like Studios, that's kind of gonna be the house for all of my other creative projects. And yeah, no questions this week. But for the comments, I would like for you to put one thing that's bringing you a lot of joy and helping you to survive in these current times. So yeah, have a good rest of your day. Bye.